Announcing the commencement of the first purge.
I want you to change the world, and don't think that this is going to happen peacefully or you can do it alone. We need to kill the rich. You get out there, you use your weapons, and you rip Washington apart. You hunt down the billionaires, the bank bosses, the CEOs, the scumbags, and the liars, the governors, the lobbyists, the senators, because they're all the same, and you hang them.
Just remember all the good the purge does.
Good morning, everyone. It's June 5th, 2018. I'm Eric. How's everyone doing this morning? I hope you're doing well. I'm going to hit some headlines on this particular website and maybe the Free Thought Project. I'm going to get into the main topic afterward. I want to kill you. Cops hold gun to unarmed man's head as they beat him on video. No one was fired. Cop who allegedly held 10-year-old boy at gunpoint was previously fired for excessive force. Council of Foreign Relations tells government they have to use propaganda on Americans. Veterans organization discovers child trafficking bunker in Tucson. Watch cop fired after chase that ended with him mowing down an unarmed man with his cruiser. Pink Floyd frontman I can't see it. What does it say? Oh yeah. Pink Floyd frontman opens show by exposing the government silencing of Julian Assange. And lastly, on the Free Thought Project, good cops fake 255,000 breathalyzer tests to beat their required DUI quotes. Or quotas, rather. So, a professor of toxicology explains how EMFs cause biological damage and even cancer. There's something all around us that we cannot see that can cause serious health problems like cancer, but that we might not even know about. You may never have heard of electromagnetic fields or EMFs, and if you have, might be unaware of their damaging effects. Nonetheless, they are all around us, and it is important to explain just what they are and how they affect us. And I'll leave a link to the website so you can check out the ones I don't cover fully. I'm uploading a video about this as we speak. Or, no, I already published it. Gay Mafia handed huge defeat in 7-2 U.S. Supreme Court decision involving a Christian banker. The gay mafias, or mafia, a term that accurately describes the bullying tactics used by the gay or lesbian, gay, bi, and trans community to badger people with differing beliefs, has just been handed a huge defeat in an overwhelming U.S. Supreme Court ruling, the 7-2 decision, which the lying left-wing media is absurdly reporting to be a narrow decision, rebuked the twisted, biased application of Colorado's gay mafia coercion laws, which force Christians to engage in pro-gay speech against their own religious beliefs. Good. And I bet the fucking mainstream media and the, what is it, the LGBTQRSTUV community. I bet they're triggered this morning, and I hope they are, because they could fuck off, all of them. U.S. healthcare system collapsing so rapidly that workers are now committing suicide in record numbers. An unprecedented number of medical professionals are committing suicide these days, and one doctor is concerned that not enough is being done both to address the problem and to prepare the victims' colleagues to deal with this escalating crisis. And I would bet that some of these suicides have a direct link to the guilt they feel for harming people. And this is the one I'm going to cover. Council on Foreign Relations tells government they have to use propaganda on Americans. And I'm going to cover this one probably next, because it's really, really fucked up. Air traffic controller test seeks diverse applicants, promotes jobless sports goers over pilots or those with experience. Council on Foreign Relations tells government they have to use propaganda on Americans. The Council on Foreign Relations delivered an Orwellian presentation recently that, unsurprisingly, went unnoticed by the mainstream media, in which CFR's Richard Stengel forwarded the notion that governments have to direct propaganda at their own domestic populations. The Council is recognized as one of the United States' oldest and most establishment think tanks of the American power elite, and it often sets the agenda on important policy questions, or, as former senior editor at the Washington Post, Richard Harwood, in a column entitled Ruling Class Journalist, approvingly described the Council as the nearest thing we have to a ruling establishment in the United States. Harwood admirably wrote, "The membership of these journalists in the Council, however they may think of themselves, is an acknowledgement of their active and important role in public affairs and of their ascension into the American ruling class. They do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States. They help make it. They are part of the establishment whether they like it or not, sharing most of its values and worldviews." CFR is a key cog in the hub of Washington think tanks promoting endless wars. As former Army Major Todd Pierce described, think tanks act as primary provocateurs, using psychological suggestiveness to create a false narrative of danger from some foreign entity, with the objective being to create paranoia within the U.S. population that it is under imminent threat of attack or takeover. In January of 2018, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange publicized the extensive sway the Council on Foreign Relations carried over U.S. mass media by tweeting a graphic created by Swiss Propaganda Research, a research and information project on geopolitical propaganda in Swiss media, which illustrated the heavy influence CFR exercises over the media narrative delivered to the American public, i.e., domestic propaganda. The illustration of the Council's deeply entrenched media presence is based on official membership rosters compiled by SPR, revealing the interconnectedness of CFR's extensive mass media influence network and its main international affiliate groups, the Bilderberg Group, covering mainly the U.S. and Europe, and the Trilateral Commission, covering North America, Europe, and East Asia. According to the report from Swiss Propaganda Research, largely unbeknownst to the general public, many media executives and top journalists of almost all major U.S. news outlets have long been members of the influential Council on Foreign Relations, established in 1921 as a private, bipartisan organization to awaken America to its worldwide responsibilities. The CFR and its close to 5,000 elite members have for decades shaped U.S. foreign policy and public discourse about it. As one council member famously explained, the goal has indeed been to establish a global empire, albeit a benevolent one. Stengel, a former editor of Time magazine, told the audience at a CFR event in late April called Political Disruptions, Combating Disinformation and Fake News, that governments have to direct propaganda toward their own populations.
So you'll be the last question, but I just want to weigh in on that for 1 second. So there's another word for master narratives. It's called history. Basically, every country creates their own narrative story. And you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population. And I don't necessarily think it's that awful. And this idea of a news cartel, I mean, I was editor of Time in 2012 during that election, and I remember, you know, you're competing against cartels and everybody. I remember being on a panel with the then editor of the New York Times, who said it's really hard to break through these days. This is the editor of the New York Times saying it's hard to break through. I wanted to jump off the platform. Like, what's it like for the rest of everybody? So I mean, there's no, I mean, there are cartels, but cartels don't have hegemony like they used to. The gentleman right there, last question.
I don't think you want to address the issue in terms of understanding what happened in the world. Because what is happening in America is what the United States flipped on the global south and in the third world, which we live with for many, many years in terms of a master narrative that was and still is propaganda.
You know what? I hate last questions. Don't you? I usually just want to end something before the last question. But at any rate, I want to thank this fantastic panel here today. And I do want to say, I actually think, I mean, the talk about optimism, I mean, the optimism is all of you there figuring out how to teach your students about this and using some of the techniques and some of the sources that we've talked about here today. And I hope you're successful. Thank you very much.
He just straight up ignored that shit. At a Council on Foreign Relations forum about fake news, former editor at Time magazine Richard Stengel directly states that he supports the use of propaganda on American citizens, then shuts the session down when challenged about how propaganda is used against the Third World. And there's a full video of the CFR event here in the article. So, Stengel is a former high-level U.S. government official, head of the Office for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs at the State Department from 2013 to 2016, and a regular pundit on MSNBC. Basically, every country creates their own narrative story, and you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist. Of course, you've already heard him say this. Zero Heads reported that Stengel's personal bio site notes that he helped create and oversee the Global Engagement Center at the State Department, whose official mission is to counter propaganda and disinformation from international terrorist organizations and foreign countries. Perhaps most ominous of all is the fact that a man who publicly says that he is not against propaganda on the U.S. government's own population was recently named a distinguished fellow as part of the Atlantic Council Digital Forensics Research Lab. Yes, the same Atlantic Council that espouses a strongly anti-Russian agenda that is funded by Ukrainian billionaire Viktor Pinchuk, who also happened to donate at least $10 million to the Clinton Foundation. Pinchuk just so happens to be the CTO and co-founder of CrowdStrike, the company used by the DNC to inspect their servers allegedly hacked by Russia, after refusing the FBI access to the same servers. Obviously, it seems to be very peculiar behavior by the DNC to refuse the FBI access to their service and instead rely on a private company unless they had an ulterior motive. Consequently, the assessment by CrowdStrike was used as a basis for what eventually resulted in the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Ironically, just 2 weeks ago, the DFR lab announced that its team has partnered with Facebook to monitor disinformation and protect elections. The DFR lab defined the new initiative as follows. The Atlantic Council, or the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Research Lab, today announced a partnership with Facebook to independently monitor disinformation and other vulnerabilities in elections around the world. The effort is part of an initiative to help provide credible research about the role of social media in elections, as well as democracy more generally. The Digital Forensics Lab Research Lab is launching a partnership with Facebook to support the world's largest community in its efforts to strengthen democracy. It's funny how democracy is always used to do the most tyrannical shit. As if on cue, with an utterly Orwellian feel, Facebook announced on June 2nd, 2018 that the user-generated trending news section will be replaced by a breaking news section, which will be comprised of 80 publications selected by Facebook that will feed approved content to users. Fun. Facebook will essentially have complete control of the topics and narratives that are fed to their users in a clear act of social engineering, which will give the social media giant and their political ideology or political ideological allies the ability to directly manipulate people's perceptions of any event. During the 2016 election, leaked internal documents from Facebook revealed that the editors in charge of the company's trending news section repeatedly discriminated against conservative articles while promoting progressive content, which resulted in the threat of an investigation from the Senate Commerce Committee. The new changes were explained in a Friday announcement. Breaking news label, a test we're running with 80 publishers across North America, South America, Europe, India, and Australia lets publishers put in a breaking news indicator on their posts in newsfeed. We're also testing breaking news notifications. Today, we're testing a dedicated section on Facebook called Today. In that connects people to the latest breaking and important news from local publishers in their city, as well as updates from local officials and organizations. News, video, and watch. We will soon have a dedicated section on Facebook Watch in the U.S. where people can view live coverage, daily news briefings, and weekly deep dives that are exclusive to Watch. So, turn off the mainstream media. Delete your Facebook account or go inactive. Do not allow yourself to be influenced by Facebook, the CFR, or the rest of them. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Remember, kill the state before the state kills you.